What's up, guys? I wanted to make a video on a pretty hot topic in the Tenere community. Are crash bars really even necessary? So running around on YouTube, I find that there's a lot of guys running without crash bars, and I know a few people personally that don't run crash bars on their ADV bikes in general. Mad Mick from the MVBDR, I believe it is, Enduro channel on his Africa Twin, he doesn't run any crash bars, and he's probably the gnarliest normal rider I've ever seen. I'll post a quick link to that. Head over to their YouTube channel, is awesome. He's got a Tenere himself, the owner of the channel does, and man, he posts a lot of awesome content, so head on over there, check that out. I'll post a quick little snippet of what they call Mad Mick riding that Africa Twin. And man, he just abuses that thing. The Africa Twin is quite a bit more wide than the Tenere is. The Tenere, the first thing that touches the ground on the Tenere is the handlebars. And I'll prove that. I'm gonna drop the bike on the ground and we'll look underneath of it. I already have this panel loosened a little bit and I'm gonna kind of take it off and go over what could be damaged. This is also the Camel ADV fairing. So this is polypropylene. It'll stand up a lot better in a crash. That's why I bought that, is so I don't have to run crash bars, but I'm still considering a lower set since the motor sticks out quite a bit on this bike. I don't think up here is nearly as necessary for crash bars as down there. All right, now that I got the fairing out of the way, we're gonna talk about what can and won't be damaged in a crash. Obviously, the first concern is the engine cases, right? So these are really exposed, mainly the water pump right there. I would say the water pump and engine cases should be the main concern in a drop. Also, you got some coolant lines there, as you can see, running through here. Obviously, if you damage any of those, you're gonna be stranded. Seems like most people's concern is the radiator. As you can see, the radiator is actually tucked way a ways in there. I would say the main concern first would probably be that bracket there. That is what's gonna contact the ground first. And then on top of that, this radiator itself isn't super expensive. You can find them used on eBay for about 140 bucks in good condition. Basically everything else in here though is like structural plastic components. Gas tank looks like it would be the next thing that would hit there. If your radiator bends and doesn't leak, it's not that big of a deal. You can still ride the bike indefinitely with a slightly bent radiator. Probably the main concern I would say would be the gas tank and that little lower bracket there for the plastic cowl or fairing or whatever you want to call it. I don't know, I would like to know your guys' thoughts on this. Like I said, I'm still considering crash bars, but let's set the bike down on the ground and see how much clearance we have. All right, so as you can see, we got the bike on the ground. I'm gonna get underneath and kind of look and see what we have for clearance here. Bearings are not touching. This is with my bars straight. My bars are a little bit narrower than the stock bars, sorry. Exhaust isn't even touching either, surprisingly. First thing to touch is the foot peg and the rear brake lever. The rear brake lever actually looks pretty tweaked in that position there. Other than that, it looks like just the handlebars are touching. I'm gonna move the handlebars here a little bit more forward. All right, so I got bars locked, right position. Fairing still not touching. Exhaust is now touching. What else? Engine cases aren't even close, surprisingly. It's mainly that rear brake, foot peg, and exhaust. Those are the main things touching. But as you can see, there's quite a bit of room there for the fairings. I can fit my entire hand underneath. I could probably almost fit two hands underneath. Obviously, if you get like a obstacle or something there, you're gonna hit that. Maybe if it's in a wrong position, you're in a rut, you'll be hitting the side of the rut or the top of the rut. But that's also possible with crash bars too. I mean, you could get a rock in the right place, goes right through the crash bars. I mean, yeah, it could happen regardless. That's all I'm trying to get at here. So yeah, I'll pick the bike back up and it actually looks like that rear brake lever might be a little bent. So we'll check that out quick. So yeah, as I showed, the main things that were hitting was the foot peg, the brake lever. The brake lever actually doesn't look broken, so that's a plus, but that seems to be a common issue. You can kind of see some scuffing on the exhaust here where it touched. I do really want a Camel ADV Enduro bend. This exhaust was $135, so I'm not gonna sacrifice this pipe. I'll just let the damn thing break off if I have to. This is ideal conditions for dropping a bike, right? Flat ground, no obstacles in the way, no rocks or anything. Obviously, if you're riding in a rocky technical area, it could be totally different. And I do ride in rocky technical areas. So yeah, I mean, obviously this sounds like me trying to just justify out of buying crash bars, but it almost looks like you kind of don't need them. But having crash bars also doesn't mean that you're not gonna break anything. It just lessens the chances. Unless I find a really good deal on crash bars, I think I'm gonna stick with the bike the way it is. I'm probably gonna order a new rear fairing as well in all black. I want this bike to be murdered out, just all black. And Yamaha parts are cheap too. Well, that's one thing that people don't realize. But obviously if you're on an adventure, like, you know, having cheap parts doesn't help you then. I mean, that's kind of like me in general. I'm not a huge adventure rider. I'm more of a dual sport rider. I like my day trips. I like riding on the road on the weekends, you know, back road, stuff like that. And then I like riding trails. And in my opinion, this is one of the best 50/50 bikes in existence. Like, this comes close to 650 performance. I would much rather be on this bike than a DR 650 riding trails, just because this bike feels so much more planted. It has so much more power. The suspension is so much better than the DR 650. In my opinion, this is just such a good 50/50 bike. I'm also a huge dude. I can handle a big bike a lot easier than the average person. Definitely lower crash bars, I would say, if you're gonna get any, would be the necessary part to get if you want crash bars. Having lower crash bars, I mean, you have your protection right here. If you have bark busters like this, you have your protection there. So you have like a window of this protecting your fairing. And then as we saw in the video earlier, you have probably about that much space with that bracket between the radiator and the plastics itself for protection as well. I personally think it's very unlikely that you would actually damage your radiator in a crash unless it was a really, really bad crash, in which case you're likely to be more worried about yourself and, you know, broken bones and stuff like that. If that bracket does bend, it's not a showstopper. You're not going to be stopping your adventure for that. I mean, if you have the stock plastics, yeah, it's a bigger deal. Obviously these Camel ADV fairings are way more stout than like the stock normal plastics. These stock plastics are just super brittle. So if you hit these are just going to crack. Whereas this is an entirely different type of plastic. This is polypropylene. You can almost fold those Camel ADV fairings in half and they won't break. If you have bark busters, you know that'll stand up to a crash. Those are going to offer a lot of extra clearance as well when the bike hits the ground. I mean, I think you can run without crash bars. There are a lot of people that already do it. Yeah, and obviously my example I stated in the beginning was a guy on a much larger, heavier, wider bike as well. And he runs without crash bars. He crashes his shit all the time. I just wanted to talk about that. I want to know your guys' thoughts. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. If you disliked it, dislike it. Do what you got to do. I appreciate everybody for watching this video. Thanks for stopping by. Peace.